Kamenetzky coming to you after Game 4, big 135-111 win for the Lakers. Thanks for joining us on Facebook, on Periscope and Twitter, on our YouTube feed. As always, we are, Andy, we're sponsored by, check this out. I'm going to see if I can make this work. We're going to share a screen here. And who are we sponsored by?
Delicious Pizza.
Yes, it didn't work. Nobody sees that, but we're going to try it again later. Delicious Pizza. Screen sharing failed, Andy, but Delicious Pizza, 2 locations, West Adams and Hollywood. 20% off if you tell them Cam Brothers when you put it in at deliciouspizza.com or you call your order in. 20% off, great food, supporting local businesses, supporting a huge Laker fan. I'm going to get that right before the end of the show. We talked about 2 things, Andy, on our preview that we do before the show goes live, getting everybody ready. You talked about, is this going to be the game we get the superstar performances at the same time for a whole game from LeBron James and Anthony Davis? And technically speaking, the answer was no, but practically yes. And my thing was, is this going to be the game where after Portland looked like they were a little bit out of gas in Game 3 down the stretch, that the Lakers just understood that and came out and kind of buried them early? And didn't give a weaker team a chance to feel like they were in it? The answer was unequivocally yes to both. 15-0 they were up in this game. I mean, they took care of business, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, this was the best the Lakers have looked to begin a game. This was the best that LeBron and Anthony Davis have looked playing together. You know, not just in the bubble, but I mean, this is the best they've looked playing together in a while. Like, I don't remember the exacts of the big weekend when they played Milwaukee and the Clippers and beat them both in that same weekend in terms of, statistically, impact, how either one of them did individually, because that game took place 7 years ago.
Right.
But the way they played tonight was it's among the most superstar tandem that we've seen Anthony Davis and LeBron James sharing the court together. It's among the highest of this season, period.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about it is, like, I always look at it, and I was on with Sedano and his playoff party that he does before with O'Shea, who's, as you might suspect, Andy, in a really good mood tonight. O'Shea.
Yes,
Jackson
he was.
Jr.
Yes, he was. I'm sure.
And so I was talking about this, like, the way I always point is, like, if you took somebody who never saw basketball, doesn't watch, doesn't care, and pointed to the screen as they walk by and said, who's the best player on the court? In Game 1, they would not have said Anthony Davis. Nobody would have looked at that and said, Anthony Davis is the best player out here right now. If you walk by you would have been like, that dude is from another planet tonight. What he was doing, I thought tonight in the first quarter, particularly defensively, was insane. And like it was wizard stuff. Like you're not getting past here, blocking shots, changing shots, all these things. It was stunning to see how effective he was at the beginning of this game.
Yeah, I'm trying to find some of the numbers on him in the first quarter, but
quarter he finished with 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks.
Yeah, it was the blocks in particular, because honestly,
it seemed like he had more.
I was going to say, I would have thought that it was more than just 2 blocks, but the amount of shots though that he altered in the lane, against Damian Lillard in particular. I mean, he had blocks at his expense. He had altered shots. He was just amazing over the course of this game. I know he blocked Melo at one point. I believe in space. I mean, the impact that we saw from Anthony Davis. And then tonight, go ahead.
No, I was saying I was pulling up the chat board and the sound came up. Go ahead.
Okay, and then just the offense they had going, especially in the mid range, which is where we saw that 2-man game going between him and Alex Caruso during Game 3. But I needed to see a little bit more of it to be totally convinced, just because AD has been, to be honest, kind of suspect from mid-range this season. Like, this is something that he typically, an area that he lives in. But this year, he has not been great. The last couple games, though, 15 to 20 feet, he's been money, man. He's been unbelievable.
This is what Laker fans were waiting to see. Like, not that, and we saw it some, in the playoffs already. And obviously in this, second half in game 3, he was incredible. But you want to see like what, sustained, what does it look like? And, and AD left the game with back spasms that seemed very precautionary. The Lakers were
he said afterwards he was
fine. The Lakers were up by, I believe, 83 points at that point. There was no reason for him to come out on the floor. LeBron didn't play in the fourth quarter. And so this, though, was that thing where, like, okay, he was good, but superstars are good all the time. Good players are good some of the time, a lot of the time. Superstars are good all of the time. And he comes out in that first quarter after
apologies, by the way. I had to do I've got some tech issues going right now. My normal laptop that I use is in the shop, and the tablet that I've been using, I'm explaining to people why my frame keeps
why you keep showing people pictures of your chestal regions.
Right. Well, it keeps going all over the place. I mean, it's swinging around like a Michael Bay film.
Oh, you're on a phone. You're doing this on a phone. It happens.
But I'm not just on a phone. I'm on a phone that I'm trying to balance. And that's not easy when I'm also trying to monitor the Periscope, monitor Twitter.
You know what? I'll take care of the Periscope, Andy. I'm on it.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
I got you.
Right there. So, okay, I'll let you do all of it, but I just wanted to explain to people right now, like, I haven't been drinking. It's just the phone
you haven't been drinking
that won't stay up.
Tonight.
Well,
now.
No, not right now.
But like, he comes out in this first quarter and you're like, oh my God, that is a superstar. And it's sustained from we expected from LeBron. LeBron finished with 8, 2, and 3 in the first quarter, but was aggressive and was moving the ball around and, looked really good. And by the way, 8, 2, and 3 is a good first quarter. Like, that's basically, a triple double waiting to happen. And so but you saw that from AD, in the first half, he played 15 minutes, finished with 18 points, 5 of 7 from the floor, 8 of 10 from the free throw line, including, and then they had the steal and the 2 blocks. LeBron in the first half, 8 of 9 from the floor, 3 of 4 from 3-point range, 3 of 4 from the free throw line, 22 points, a block. That was the chase down. Like, you're not going to lose many games with your Lakers when LeBron is 8 of 9 in a half and AD is 5 of 7 from a half. Like that's not, you're going to win pretty much all of those halves and go in up by 29 points. That's just that's going to be.
Like I said before, this was the most dominant that they've looked like as a tandem, certainly since they've been in the bubble, but it's amongst the most for the entire season. If they can channel something like this in tandem on a regular basis, good luck beating this team. I'm not saying they're unbeatable, but I will say good luck beating them. They're going to be a hard out, because when they play like this, A, I think it gives the other guys a lot of confidence and it opens up a lot for them. But B, it takes the pressure off the other guys to only have to be so good. I mean, as it turns out, there were a lot of other guys who played well. But when those guys step it up like that, it's going to be hard for other teams around the league to match star power. And at the end of the day, star power is what typically wins out in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, and then Andy, we talk about what happens when the Lakers aren't bad from 3-point range. Like, what if they were just competent? Like on nights when they're just okay, they're going to be a really good offense. We never really consider what happens if they go nuclear and hit over 50% of their 3-pointers in a half. Then what happens? And again, you end up by 29. Nights like that, it's unfair.
I tweeted out, it was like one of those 80s body switching comedies, except like instead of Judge Reinhold and Fred Savage or some 80s adult and 80s kid, you had the Lakers and a team with shooters. I was like watching this going like, who the hell are these guys? I've never seen them shoot like this.
So you have AD playing the way he did. You have LeBron playing the way he did. You get, the incredible 3-point shooting. I want to talk a little bit, and we have a lot more to break down about the game, and we want to talk about pace, and we want to talk about a little bit of the rotation, whether or not Portland is done here. But obviously, so much of what was happening tonight was built around Kobe Bryant, and it's Kobe Bryant Day. And today in LA, they renamed that stretch on Figueroa between Staples Center and I think it's down by USC. I forget exactly
I believe it's MLK.
MLK. Okay, so
or now Obama. I believe
there's a lot of changing names.
But I believe.
But that's more or less.
I believe that stretch may be now Obama Boulevard, but I'm not 100% sure.
So you have this going on, and I am not Bill Orm did a really fun story about sort of the numerology around Kobe, and he's so deeply meaningful to people in LA and everywhere, really, that you want people look there's always like a sign that you can connect something, because there's so many things that are personal to people about Kobe. 24-8 is not a basketball score.
No.
Like that's a football game. You walk by the TV in the first quarter, your football team's down 24-8. You're like, this isn't good. I need something. You see 24-8 in a basketball game, you're like, wow, one team's getting dusted here. You see 24-8 in a basketball game on Kobe Bryant Day in this context, it really, with the team wearing the uniforms and all, I can hardly blame people, Andy, I think, for pulling meaning into it where they would want to.
Well, I mean, the beauty of it is you can have whatever meaning you want from it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's no wrong here. I mean, forget the fact that, things like that are unprovable. The truth is, what difference does it make?
It doesn't matter at all. Exactly.
If you take meaning from it as a Laker fan watching, a member of the Laker coaching staff, the players themselves, and LeBron, KCP, Kuz, everybody that I heard get asked about this, they were all cognizant of that one point in the score. Frank Vogel was the only one who said that he didn't notice it in the moment.
Right.
But all these other guys did, and all of these players, it meant a lot to them to be playing on this day. 8/24, the day after what would have been Kobe's 42nd birthday, but also to play at this level, to really be on the court, paying an appropriate tribute to Kobe. It meant a lot to these guys. You can tell by the way they played, by the way they talked about it leading up to this game, and the way they talked about it. You
tweeted that after the game. Like, this was absolutely 100% the most appropriate Kobe Bryant tribute the Lakers could put on, was to come out here and just stomp Portland in a game that if they win, Portland's not going to win this series. If the Blazers come out and they stay in it and they somehow steal Game 5, something maybe they shouldn't, or Game 4, Lakers still probably win, but you're extending something. Winning tonight, Portland's not winning 3 times in a row, and that is a great tribute. You're right, and we'll get to that.
Lillard, but this was. Whether you think Portland has one good game left in them, one, Damian Lillard heroic performance, assuming the knee holds up. He was getting an MRI, Chris Haynes reported from the game. Whether you think they just have enough fight in them to legitimately challenge the Lakers in Game 5 before the Lakers close them out, you're correct. Not winning this game took any hopes that they had of winning this series out from under them.
It's not going to happen.
They're not good enough to beat the Lakers 3 times in a row. I mean, they may not be good to beat them 3 times, period, but they can't beat them 3 times in a row. They're just simply not good enough.
We in the last show after Game 3, we had a long talk. I thought it was a good discussion, just about what it means to carry the Kobe thing through the playoffs. And I still think, at the very least, if you don't win a title this year, you've let down Kobe, you've somehow dishonored his memory, you did something wrong. I think that is just a wild and unfair thing to put on players. And I even think, to some degree, because you have to find things inside of yourself to motivate you, it can be hard to be like, I got to go win this for Kobe. That will help some players. It might not help others. But I will say one thing I don't know if I considered is, and Frank Vogel has alluded to this, and some of the other players have alluded to it. There are certain things that are missing from this playoff drive, and the motivation of a crowd, the whatever it might be, that guys are used to drawing on to go win under really difficult circumstances, like a playoff or whatever it might be. And so to have the opportunity then to look at it and say, maybe I can draw inspiration from here. And what's funny, I'll tell you what made me think of this, Andy, ironically, and maybe we'll have time to talk about it before the show's over, is we were having a discussion, George and Zach Harper and O'Shea, about Paul George and how he listens too much to what other people say and the motivation here and there. And that guys always invent things for themselves and make up things for themselves and maybe find motivation where it doesn't seem like it's there. Kobe could help fill some of that. If you can't find motivation in a crowd or whatever it might be in your normal playoff routine, maybe there is something that I didn't consider about how finding extra inspiration from Kobe Bryant's memory could be that thing that lifts you. I don't know if I considered that in full. It certainly came through tonight, with the way they played, wearing the jerseys and all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way.
It was a long point to make, but but
it's an interesting way of looking at it, and I hadn't specifically considered that element of it before, or that angle on it myself. I tried after the game, and actually before the game, and just couldn't get through in the Zoom to ask Frank Vogel if he's ever had any concern about these guys putting too much pressure on themselves in terms of needing to win this season,
right? Specifically
to pay tribute to Kobe, given everything Kobe meant to this organization, but also everything that he meant to the players on this roster. I mean, whether you're talking about the relationship that he had with LeBron, or, that I think particularly down the stretch of Kobe's career as he was getting older, and then afterward, they began to get more close. The way Dwight Howard never got the closure with Kobe that he really wanted, or the way Quinn Cook, frankly, idolizes Kobe. I mean, Quinn Cook was down at the LA Live, the plaza with all the fans the day of the crash, when all those fans were out there leaving flowers and different signs and all these really lovely, heartfelt gestures. Quinn Cook was in the middle of it. And he said that fans gave him his space to mourn. But I mean, he was Quinn Cook's absolute favorite player. So, I mean, there's a connection point to all of these guys. And I haven't been able to specifically ask Frank about that. And maybe I'll try later on. And I have a feeling the players wouldn't necessarily give that much open perspective about it, just because they're so in the middle of it. Even if they thought you were right, I don't think they'd say it out loud. Right, exactly. But like we talked about before, and I still think this is the case, whatever pressure, whatever burden, whatever onus that these guys feel to honor Kobe this way, I think it's going to come from within. I don't think it's going to be external. I don't think it's going to be the fans putting too much of a burden on them, because I feel like ultimately, if these guys don't feel like that's a fair ask, that there's enough going on over the course of trying to win a championship, which is damn hard anyway, that it's not fair or wise to put that on their own shoulders, I think they will find a way not to do it. If they're feeling that way, and if you're right, then I think right. And if you're right, I think that will help them, as long as it's internal, as long as it's personal and feels. It doesn't, like the way I phrased it the other night was, if it's not a burden, if it doesn't feel like an obligation, then it's something I think that helps. If it does, then I think it'd be a problem. It might feel like an obligation. It just can't feel like a negative one, or an external one, or something that somebody's putting on you. Right. But if it feels like an obligation because this is what they want from this championship run, they specifically want to honor Kobe this way, then I think it's okay. Yeah, I really do. And also, I think it's unavoidable no matter what. That's how they feel. It's how they feel. Well, this is one of the reasons where, if you look at the Lakers, and I realize most people do not like the Lakers, Andy. I understand why most people don't like the Lakers.
that aren't Lakers fans. So like they're, the Laker Nation, and I hate that expression, but like, Lakers, have a massive reach around the world. There's no question. But when you look around as for reasons to pull for this team this year, and you think of all the stuff that they've endured throughout this season, even obviously up into and including the death of Kobe Bryant, like it's a compelling story. Like you want to. I wonder even if there are people who normally hate the Lakers, or at least this year, who are kind of like, okay, like given what they're playing for and what they've been through and what the organization has seen, I got to cut them at least a little slack.
I actually wrote for The Athletic a few days after Kobe's death in a piece about the burden that LeBron now carries as the face of this organization. And being the face of the Lakers is a hell of a burden under the best of circumstances, much less these.
Yeah, there's no question.
And also, too, specifically, the burden of being the next franchise face after Kobe and how hard that was always going to be. LeBron, it's as appreciated as LeBron is, he's still Goliath, and people generally don't root for Goliath. And the Lakers are as Goliath-y an organization as exists in professional sports. But I actually thought this year, outside of whatever team you would be rooting for out of personal interest, that the Lakers were going to be the sneaky sentimental favorite among NBA fans. And if it's not going to be their team with Kobe, I think most fans would be okay with the Lakers winning one for him. I really feel that way.
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating reversal.
It won't be their next year.
Reversal.
I can tell you right now, this will not carry on. It will be this year.
And nobody would ever wish for the circumstances that create this kind of goodwill. But it is a kind of a fascinating twist in basketball, in sort of normal basketball alignment. And I think you're exactly right. There will be many more, I think, Kobe tributes. And you saw a lot of guys wearing jerseys and all that stuff. You really just, it's another reminder of how meaningful he was to players, and how meaningful his legacy remains around town.
Russell Westbrook was at the Thunder game, Rockets Thunder game, wearing a Kobe 8.
A lot of people wearing 8s on the way in. Get back to the game here, though. There were actually, let's do this. Getting back to the game in just a second, Andy, after we tell people that, darn it,
that you're trying really hard to do the graphics for Delicious Pizza, our sponsor, 2 locations, West Adams or Hollywood, 20% off.
Why did it work in my practice?
Password Cam Brothers, whether you are ordering online or you're showing up to order for pickup. Again, Cam Brothers, 20% off, awesome pizza. You are supporting local business and a diehard Laker fan who is extremely excited about this, Michael Ross. So I think he'll forgive us with all of that if we still can't figure out the graphics.
Well, no, and and for the podcast, at least the the video version of it, I can actually just drop it in there. But I wanted to do it on the live thing, Andy, so we'll just move on.
Well, I mean, the lead up to it though was really smooth.
It was. No, it was good. We were changing subjects anyway.
That you were efforting.
No, isn't it the effort that counts?
You didn't seem nervous like a third grader about to do their school play or anything.
Nope, sure didn't.
You looked
so.
As Dan Levitard would say, you were leaking confidence.
quickly. Yes. It's there is the way the Lakers played tonight, particularly in the first quarter. They played with pace. They played with speed. They played with what Rob Pelinka would refer to as thrust, which always makes me think of the Big Lebowski and Jesus. I don't think Rob Pelinka meant it in a dirty way, that when he said he wants the Lakers to play with thrust, although I've never asked him.
No, but I mean, here's the thing: when you're as handsome as Pelinka, it's always going to seem vaguely sexual.
Yeah,
I mean, just when you're that good looking, it's the burden that Rob carries.
That's true. Rob Pelinka, Rob Lowe, the Robs.
Well,
but like the Lakers are most effective when they move and when they play at speed. They are very, very efficient, very good when they finish. it tells you something that the Lakers were still the number one team in field goal percentage, despite being 19th in the league heading into the bubble in 3-point shooting. When they get moving like that, and it's not necessarily just finishing on the fast break, it's just moving at pace and getting up and down the floor. And if you have a crack, thrusting through it rather than waiting somehow to see that thing to thrust right through, Andy.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I still, where do you rank playing with thrust? Right up there, because like for me, playing with thrust is right up there with Mana from Heaven with KCP, or pulling out, what was it?
The Trolley Story?
The Trolley Story is fantastic. But
I believe he's busted
what book
out the
did he
Alchemist.
bring out? The Alchemist. That's what it was.
The Alchemist, and hasn't there been some Pablo Neruda at some point?
Probably, but I was just thinking of when he actually did the reading from The Alchemist. I thought that was great. The Trolley Story was fantastic. It brings up bad memories from the Lakers. It was a bad time, but the Trolley Story was great. But I love playing with thrust.
Bad times, but hilarious.
Yes,
unintentionally.
We got a lot of mileage out of the trolley car story.
No, Rob actually, I have to say, and I want to make sure to point this out because it's something I criticized him a lot for last year and first couple of years. Rob has really cut back on the flowery, literary, highfalutin speak that on one hand was absolutely the smart thing for him to be doing as a general manager messaging until at least he starts having some winning seasons under his belt. They're just, after a while, some of this just started feeling, frankly, like BS. I am very disappointed from a content perspective that he's doing the smart thing because it was great for us. It was
brilliant. It was
better
so
for the organization. Yeah, the new Pelinka, much better for the actual organization, but it's worse for us.
It's worse for us. And let's be honest. What is more important, our content or the success of the Lakers? Maybe we need to do a poll. I'm not sure. It's a toss-up for me. It may not be a toss-up for everyone else.
I'd like to think they're not mutually exclusive, but if they are, it's probably the content.
How do you think, because I think we kind of alluded to this, Portland probably cooked. Both physically and certainly just from a talent standpoint, they're not coming back. I think 3-1 against the Lakers, and especially if Damian Lillard got an MRI after the game on his knee, if he's not available, they're certainly not coming back to win. I think the Lakers close this out on Wednesday. Is this the kind of look, the sort of momentum they could carry past Houston, carry past Oklahoma City, two teams that are playing, I think, at a higher level certainly than Portland is right now? Is there a team, a matchup, something like this where you look at it and say, okay, I still need to see more, or is what we saw in the third and fourth quarter in game 3 and the first quarters tonight before the game was over is enough to beat anybody and potentially beat anybody convincingly?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in terms of thinking about who they play next between OKC and Houston, which is knotted up, and if you're the Lakers, the thing you're hoping for most over anything else is just 7 games. Just let those guys tire themselves out some more while you hopefully close it out 2 days from now and get some rest that you need. The pace that they've been playing with now, I've been wondering a little bit because they were starting to crank it up during game 3. And then we saw just a lot of it from the jump tonight. I mean, they were efforting.
And it really does start with Anthony Davis on the defensive side. When he went back and reviewed his own tape, I asked him this question after game 2. When you went back and looked at game 1 and he said, I didn't play well, but what did you see that he didn't like? He talked about his defense. And, it was better. It's been better and better and better as it went along. And tonight it was insane how impactful he was without even scoring a point in keeping Portland off the board.
But just when they really make that point, KCP, among other guys, talked about this after the game. They were very conscious of looking to run at every opportunity. We saw that after every Portland miss. Even if it wasn't a fast break, they were pushing the ball up court. And that's really when they're at their best, even if it's not a fast break, just just baskets or opportunities created out of transition, out of running. I'll be curious to see their ability to do that potentially against a Thunder team that has not been playing its best defense against Houston, but typically this season has been a good defensive team, and they've got good defensive guards who at least at times could be disrupted that way.
They have a guy like Dort who really is a genuine defensive specialist.
He is a really, really good young defender. And then when you think about with Houston, the 3-point explosion that we saw from the Lakers tonight, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think that was an outlier, considering what
that was actually Sam
Yassine
just asked that question on the Periscope chat. Like, is this something they can keep up throughout? And he didn't say what they did tonight. He just says consistent. Like, what would you say would qualify as consistent? Like a consistent 34%?
I was going to say 34, 35%, because if they can shoot 35% from outside, combined with their ability to attack the rim in a way that Houston is really not situated to defend. Like they are not set up to deal with Anthony Davis or LeBron or JaVale or Dwight at the rim. Even a guy
they did beat the Lakers with that construction.
They did, but that was also, though, the Lakers had barely seen that team.
And it wasn't 7 games.
Right, and it wasn't 7 games. But the Lakers are going to have to be able to keep pace scoring with Houston no matter how they do it.
Yes.
So those are the things that I'm curious about. I would say their ability to keep pace with Houston, and specifically the ability to run that type of transition and pace against OKC. Off the top of my head, those are some of the things I think about.
It's funny too. We spent a lot of time on the show before I came on. With you and our show with George and O'Shea and Zach, and we were talking a lot about like the rest of the conference and what it looks like. And as much as there have been legitimate reasons to worry about what the Lakers did, especially early in this series, you look around the rest of the Western Conference, nobody is necessarily covering themselves in glory, at least among the favorites. Utah's really impressing people, obviously, what Donovan Mitchell is doing. And Dallas is saying, but like the Clippers haven't, I think, impressed anyone.
No.
Denver has been awful. Like they can't defend anyone. I had really high hopes for them in the playoffs. Totally underestimated missing the guys that they're missing, how much that would impact them. It's, the Lakers, as granted LA just pointed out on the chat, really the only of the favorites, at least, of the teams that are playing defense right now.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, they are fully dialed in there.
Absolutely. And I mean, it would be interesting to see how if it came to this, they would score against a team like Utah that I think is actually built in certain ways to deal with what they do. But, that would be
also
happening.
Not exactly, they're not playing great defense right now. I mean,
no, but
Denver's problem isn't scoring.
No. But I'm saying in theory, Utah has shown the ability to do that at times, if not necessarily in the bubble. Nobody's playing defense in the West like the Lakers in the bubble, period.
Yeah.
Like they've been
in the playoffs,
by far,
for sure.
Yeah, they've been by far the best defensive team among the Western Conference playoff teams. But at the same time, they've been one of the best defensive teams all year, period. So we know that's not a fluke.
No, absolutely not. I mean, shooting 51% from 3-point range like they did in the first half tonight, that is. But it is funny. Like, so much of this becomes about, like, can they just be normal? On a night like tonight where they get all of the things, where it's LeBron and AD do that stuff and they elevate and they get the 3-point shooting and they're going to blow out everyone. But that's not going to happen this way all the time. And so, it's amazing. But this is another one of those games. And this is, sort of inside the stuff. Like this happened in which was the other game they won pretty easily? Was it game 2?
3.
Game 3, where they won pretty easily. Like you start to take all the notes and you write things down and you're doing all that stuff. And then by like halftime, you're like, I'm not writing anything down anymore. Like they scored it was 80-51 at the half. I'm done writing things down.
Yeah. I mean, they've become increasingly less of a note-taking team, which is a good sign in terms of how they're playing.
Still a little bit of curiosity in there about the whole JR or Dion thing. JR on the floor before Dion Waiters again tonight. It's still sort of weird to me. I don't
get
understand it.
I
J.R.
mean,
Smith, it's not like he's bringing anything.
Look, it is not in the grand, or I would say even minor scale of things, that big of an issue for the Lakers so far. I mean, J.R. Smith has not been, I guess, inexplicably given such a large role that you wonder about how much he's going to hurt the team by being out there. I mean, unless it turns into a night like tonight, he's only going to be playing 10 minutes tops, if that. I mean, he's not going to be playing much more. But that being said, I don't understand why those minutes aren't going to Dion. I mean, especially when you saw Dion actually get minutes tonight, and Dion wasn't perfect. And if your solution, like your Solomon-like solution, is split the baby in half by not playing either, I would totally understand that.
I can't decide who I want to play, so I'm just going to play neither of you.
Right. I mean, if that was the route that Frank Vogel went, I would totally understand it. But seemingly more determined to play JR ahead of Dion, I just don't get it. Like in theory, the explanation could be because those minutes have been matched up with LeBron. You know, the playmaking responsibilities that you'd see from Dion aren't going to be there, so you'd want to space the floor maybe more with JR. But the truth is, JR's not spacing the floor well right now, and he hasn't spaced the floor well in the bubble.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, as you pointed out, he hasn't spaced the floor since like 2017 because that's the last time he was an effective basketball player.
So I mean,
in any way, shape, or form.
You know, I'm not going to say that it's such a big deal that it's hurting the team. And who knows, once Rondo really is an option, it may become a true moot point. But if you're asking me if I get it, the answer is no. I really don't get it. I don't understand it.
All right. I want to do this because I don't want to shift out of what is otherwise a serious topic. I'm going to give this one more try. Does everybody see Delicious Pizza?
Yes, it's there.
Delicious Pizza, 2 locations in Los Angeles, West Adams and Hollywood. Stop by, tell them the Cam Brothers sent you, whether you're doing it at deliciouspizza.com or you call in your order, you get 20% off. Really good food. Wasn't that worth it?
Yeah, quite.
Yeah.
Quite.
Well, Michael might think it is. All right. The last thing I want to talk about, and we don't, people will be waking up to a lot of this if they haven't seen it already, whether it's LeBron James, whether it's Kyle Kuzma, a lot of people talking about what happened in Kenosha with another police shooting and the question of social justice. And George Hill on the Bucks after his game basically said, I don't think we should be here. We've taken attention away from what is more important than basketball, the movement. It has slowed momentum and all these other things. And neither one of us are going to tell George Hill that he's wrong or that his feelings are incorrect and white-splain away what's going on here. I don't necessarily know if I agree with him, though. I do think actually having these guys here has made a big difference in keeping, at least among a certain segment of the population, going, because I don't think it was the start of basketball, Andy, that changed the context here. It was the return of coronavirus. It was people getting back to their jobs, people starting to get ready for school or whatever it might be, to whatever extent life.
We have an election in like 70 days.
There's a lot going on. And I think just naturally the momentum and the attention, particularly when the virus kind of came back a little bit, it came back a lot in a lot of places. I remember. I don't think it's unfair to say that basketball has helped keep the conversation going.
I mean,
yeah, it's hard for me to say exactly, but that's my impression.
I remember we talked before actually even the bubble opened up, because this was one of the questions, whether this should even be happening or not. And forget whether media was discussing this or just regular people. This was something that was being discussed by the players themselves. And, you heard a lot of players questioning whether or not they should be going in there or not, specifically for that reason. I feel like the they have an ability to control the conversation to whatever degree they can by constantly having microphones in front of them and constantly being filmed, asked questions, and they have the ability to steer their responses wherever they want. Is that enough in and of itself? No. But there's nothing any of these players could have been doing if the season had been canceled on their own that I think would have forced the conversation to remain as alive as it was at its peak. Like that it stayed as fervent as it did for so long is really amazing when you consider how culturally in this country we flip subjects so quickly. We move off things with incredible and sometimes very irresponsible speed. We look away from things that we should be spending more time on, and that is part of the reason why these issues keep recurring, because we don't spend enough time on them in the first place. But it's also, it is not in the nature of most people, and I would even include myself in this, or most people, period. Activism as a full-time thing is exhausting. It's really, really hard.
It is.
And even the most well-intentioned people are only going to be able to stay on message, that focused, for so long. Again, it's pretty amazing that we collectively as a country were talking about systemic racism and police brutality and these type of inequities for as long as we did. And at some point, that conversation was going to, I'm not going to say dissipate, because I don't think it has, but it was going to fade in strength, regardless of how anybody did anything. But I think the players do have an opportunity right now, a direct opportunity to be keeping people talking about this in ways that maybe they would have had before, but maybe they wouldn't have, because depending on the amount of protests that were still going on or not going on, or as visible or as covered by media, if players didn't have the platform that they have right now in the bubble, I'm not sure where all of them would have the platform. Somebody like LeBron would have the platform no matter what, because he's LeBron. But, Malcolm Brogdon, for example, who got a lot of coverage for leading a rally. I don't remember which city it was in. I don't know if Malcolm Brogdon, for example, has that type of platform outside of the immediate aftermath anywhere but the bubble. I don't know if the average NBA player, however many months we are removed from George Floyd, I don't know if they have the same.
It's just, there's not, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
No, and again, I agree. I'm not going to tell George Hill he's wrong.
Right. I just don't think, that from my perspective, I feel like it helps, but I don't know. It's just, it's a sad situation. It's a tragic situation. And it's something that, to their credit,
Jacob
at least,
Blake,
the players,
specifically in Kenosha,
yes,
we didn't say it earlier,
Blake,
is what sparked this conversation yet again, shot seven times
in the back.
Point blank range.
It is. I understand why players would feel like they're in the wrong spot, but
also I want to urge people, because I'm sure the video will be made available somewhere, to find LeBron speaking afterwards. He spoke the longest I can recall him post game or post practice since entering the bubble, and he talked about police brutality and what it's like for Black people as adults or as children, their relationship with police and being fearful of police. He spoke about the gun culture in this country and the prevalence of the problems caused by it. He spoke about memories of Kobe. He talked about a really wide variety of subjects. It's absolutely worth seeking out.
All right, so that is not a conversation that we're gonna finish tonight. It's going to be something that is ongoing throughout the playoffs. Back to basketball, the Lakers looking really good and starting to round into the type of form that I think everybody expected, that I think not a lot of teams in the Western Conference are playing at right now. You look at really across basketball, the teams that are playing best at this moment are the Lakers, the Raptors, and probably Miami. And two of those teams are in the other conference. So that's a good sign for the Lakers. We're going to be back Wednesday, Andy, for Game 5 when both of us believe that the Lakers will close this thing out. And our guest will be Aaron Larsoul, the great Aaron Larsoul from the Official Lakers podcast. Super awesome guy. Very excited now that we feel confident enough in putting this thing.
Chef.
Yeah, no, really. Putting this thing onto the internet that we can actually have people on it. So that will be Wednesday with Aaron Larsoul. So please make sure to join the chat and the show. Then we will see everybody on Wednesday. Thanks a lot.